purpose is more of a story.
Mhm.
Expression and expansion is more of an is. Purpose is more, and again, I'm not diminishing it. I think it gives people juice. But I kind of just experience it. I do what I do because it feels good. It feels alive. If someone says, "Do you have a purpose?" It feels a little mental. I'm just feeling it. It feels like, oh, that's a thought. That's a story. I guess I do. I can't stop doing what I do. But is it a purpose? I'm not sure I need that. So the purpose of life is living, expressing, expanding.
I
And
love that.
and and people talk about, I want to go to ultimate peace, and I go, heaven gets boring.
I love that.
You've been there, and you came here, and I just to again pattern interrupt, kind of shock people, like, been there, done that. Heaven gets boring. You'll want an adventure. You'll go, put me in, coach. You'll leave that perfection. You'll leave that total peace. And you'll want to do something new and different.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Lola, welcome to Broaderlands podcast. What an honor to have you on.
Well, thank you for having me. What an honor to be here with you.
Now I'm looking forward to this. I know we chatted briefly the other day, and it was just a really easy chat. It was just, it's easy. Yeah, so I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, I appreciate your authenticity, and that made me more excited about having this talk with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is the biggest podcast in Japan right now. I'm just playing.
What? Well, that's as weird as me being popular in Germany. How did that happen? I believe you, because things like that happen. Yeah.
I noticed on your Instagram, it's called Divine Openings. I would love for you
Yes.
to explain what Divine Openings means.
Good question. Like most of my work, that just came to me in 2006 after I spent that 21 days in total silence and just turned my life right side up. Everything came to me. It wasn't like I sat down and thought, well, am I going to call my work this? It's a divinely assisted opening, a divine opening. And then it wasn't like, what am I going to call my book? This title came to me, and I just listened and did it. So it's an energetically assisted opening of our mind, our heart, our energy field. It does basically whatever it wants. It may do a physical healing. It may blast out stagnant energies that have needed to move. Sometimes I'm invoking a healing and they get a divine opening. Sometimes I'm invoking a divine opening and they get a physical healing. So I just kind of laugh and say, my job when I'm invoking one of them, a formal divine opening, is to go completely silent, get out of the way, create the space, and let the divine do the heavy lifting. So in a way, the work is called Divine Openings overall, but A divine opening is where, for a few minutes, I specifically create this space where a divine opening happens.
Thank you.
Mm.
Did you have an awakening? Like, what happened? Maybe you can walk us into your upbringing a little bit and your awakening journey.
Well, I was always sort of a rebel and a person who just did new things. I didn't follow the family trajectory of getting a job, and I tended towards self-employment, doing unusual new things. I was probably self-employed from 27 to now at 71. I taught fitness, I did corporate training, and I mean, when I taught fitness, I had, like, hundreds of people in my class, um, and learned at that time that I was a leader. People would go, "You changed my life." I said, "Really?" And it began to dawn on me that there was something in there. Then I led corporate trainings with spiritual underpinnings. Back in the 80s and 90s, you could not talk spiritual in corporate like you can now, but people would have spiritual insights in a corporate business setting. And I was going, ooh, okay, now something's cooking. And in 2001, the big trade center thing, corporate training shriveled up. So there I was with no corporate trainings. So I went in, painted, went within. I lived on 10 acres with horses at that time. I just was doing nothing, painting, taking a break, around 50 something, and thinking, okay, I'm done. I'm washed up. I don't have the energy to start all over. Well, it turns out I did. I ended up, one thing led to another, and a friend paid for me to go to a 21-day silent event out in the jungles of India. And I wasn't crazy about their whole program, but oh, I went within, and where some people talked to their friends and couldn't do the silence, I did the silence. I was so ready. I had actually told the presence, if you don't give me a path of joy, I quit. We used to learn by suffering and struggle. That was the main route of learning for millennia, probably. Even Buddhism, I think, helped people accept that life is suffering and struggle. Well, we were dawning into a new age, and something in me said, nope, I'm done learning by suffering and struggle. And if you don't give me a path of joy, I don't know what I thought I was going to do, but sometimes I think it helps to throw a fit. And so I landed in this, I do. I landed in this retreat that gave me that space to do that 21 days of silence. And I mean, I just decided I'm just going to let everything go. And anything that stays with me must have been valuable, but I'm cleaning house. I got empty, no thoughts, no speaking. If I talked at all, I'd talk to the presence. And I'd just chat about, oh, look at those little frogs peeking out at me through the crevices. And, oh, look, I'm just walking along this dirt path. And, oh, this food is really boring. And I'd just chat with the presence and got very empty. And out of that, this fresh new life began immediately after it. The book just sprung out of me. Clients started coming to me. I started having just a few people in my living room. Then I was having retreats. I started a website and a woman promoted it internationally. I mean, it just went boom with zero effort. Back then, Google just loved me and decided all these people should see my website. I'm sure it was a destiny point that I hit. And then, of course, with destiny, we have to do our part to um, do the actions and let it happen and take our steps. So it was destiny plus free will. And it's just been going for 20 years since then.
Hmm.
Yeah. And growing and growing and evolving. And I wasn't spiritually mature right out of that retreat. Now I look back and think, boy, I was powerful, but I was kind of like a baby powerful. I look back and think, oh, well, I would have changed that.
There's a question I wanting to ask you because I know you talk about this a lot. Is grace? I've always had a problem with that term. I don't know why. Just as
Yeah.
an individual, what
Mm.
is grace? How do you define grace, and how do you allow 90% of grace do the work? Like you talk
Mhm.
about. I'm interested in learning from you.
Yes, I think a lot of us have a bit of PTSD around certain religious terms, and
Yeah, yeah.
grace, unfortunately, has some goo on it from our religious conditioning, kinda like the word God. In my book, I say, "Look, call it Fred if you want." It's a shorthand term, and I use the presence, and I use source, but grace. To me, grace is that life force that orchestrates all the good that is trying to come to us. Grace, I look at it like grace is always raining on us, but our conditioning, our fears, even our old religious wounding makes us sometimes resistant to allowing grace, almost like there's this rainstorm of grace happening, but we've got our umbrella up and our raincoat on, and that's why I say you could die of thirst in a rainstorm. Also, we have this human side that kind of wants to do it our way, and that's not a bad thing. That's how we expand the universe, by creating unique experiences as human beings. So I don't think it's bad that we're a bit resistant and I want to do it my way. But if we can get in alignment with letting grace do what it will do for us, and then we do our 10% in alignment with it, that's when the most amazing things happen. So let me shorten it. Grace is the force of good, and it's always raining on us. Things we do to get in the way of grace. Think thoughts that are contradictory to, think negative, limiting thoughts.
Mhm.
Doubt the guidance that we're getting. Um, let our human emotions get us in a vibration that makes us resistant to grace, inaccessible, like putting the raincoat on and the umbrella. Like if I'm sitting here mad about something that I tried that just failed, grace is raining new opportunities on me, but I got my raincoat on and my umbrella.
I love that. Yeah, appreciate that. Especially when you use the words life force, like it spoke to me. And I think
the word grace, I have a problem with the word grace for some reason. And it could be from a different lifetime.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Why do I have a problem with that word grace?
That's a good one to just explore. And I
Yeah.
say when there's a fragment of us, so to speak, caught in another timeline, multidimensional, early in life, other dimensional life, other life, I always just go, what part of me is feeling that? It's not me, my large self, this evolved being that you've become or I've become. It's some little part of us that really needs us to bring it home. Yeah, and yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. Some part of me, some part of you has a problem with that word. It's not your large self that has a problem with that word. Uh, Now you could call it something else, but what? What would we Yeah, you could like the life force that flow that will
Yeah.
carry us. Yeah. And that song Amazing Grace, Yeah, religion has tainted a lot of things for us. My friend Bob in Austin used to say, I'm a recovering Baptist.
I love that. I recorded with a friend from Nigeria, and he talked about how one of the slave ships was named Grace,
Mm,
and another one was Jesus, another one was John the Baptist. So I wonder if there's a connection there because I just
could
recorded
be.
with him too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
interesting. You know, um, I come from the 12-step community. When I got on my path and got sober, and in one of the steps of the 12 steps, they talk about God's will versus self will. And I would love for you to break down what is free will. And I know you talk about it as being a gift, but sometimes I think about like free will, utilizing my own will is like a bad thing because of the conditioning I got in the 12-step community. But I don't believe that anymore. But I would love for you to share a little bit about the difference or in what is free will.
Yeah. I mentioned destiny and free will. Destiny, I think, is things we planned to accomplish or challenge we intended to face before we came in. And then free will is how we go about that. Do we resist it? Do we let it be easy? Do we do it this way? Do we do it that way? Do we do it this way? Do we help 10 people? Do we help 1 million people? Okay. So both, they don't contradict really. They're just two factors. Uh, we decide some stuff and then we leave some stuff open because that's the fun of it. The choice. We're not like robots. I come in and I do this. Now, um, so free will, I do look at it as a gift because if we had no free will, we'd just be like the plant or the flower, and that's a different experience. It's blissful and it's wonderful, but only more advanced sentient beings like us get this gift of free will, that we have the choice to go with the flow of grace. That plant out there has no choice. That rabbit out there has no choice. They're going with the flow of grace.
Mm.
But we humans can go, okay, I'll go with the flow of life, or I'll resist it and just to see what happens. I don't want to do that. Okay, you can do that. You have the free will to even do things that don't serve you or that don't work. And you'll learn from it. You'll learn from it. Like going back to, we used to learn by suffering and struggle. But come on, we've had so many lives of that. I really believe this time is a crescendo of, okay, been there, done that. I think we got it now, and we don't need to learn by suffering and struggle anymore. And that's where the paths of joy and the new openings of learning by sheer creativity, the new openings of going with the flow of life, if you don't want the word grace, go in the flow of life, letting it carry you, but then using your free will to embellish on it. Yeah, I know I've had it learning from struggle and suffering. I had it over 20 years ago and said, okay, next.
Do you believe there's universal law?
Yeah, I do. I
Eh,
do. Like we're eternal beings. We're graced. We're showered with love and goodness, if you would rather call it that. You could call it goodness. You could call it goodness, the force of good. Um, Everything changes except these universal laws. um, let's see. Yeah, we have free will and we're powerful creators. Those are some of the basics. Yeah. Yeah.
What about like compassion and understanding? Like, because a lot of the religions they talk about in spiritual traditions to be, oneness. They talk about love and understanding, forgiveness. Would that be considered universal law as well? Or is that something
Mm.
we need to practice to stay in
It gets us
grace with universal law?
It gets us, yes, exactly. It's things we do to use our free will to either get in that flow or oppose that flow and have that experience. Yeah. Yeah. It's, we can, I saw this movie the other day and I went, oh my God, the psychotherapy portrayed in there was the kids still blaming this grown adult is still blaming her parents for her issues. And I'm going, oh my God, that is such a block. I was kind of shocked because in my world, we've learned we need to take responsibility and create our lives now. And that blaming them, it's like a hamster wheel. It never ends. And so, yeah, I, I prefer finding peace with people who have hurt us rather than forgiveness. I use the word forgiveness in self-forgiveness, but when it comes to other people, when it gets down to it, forgiving them sounds kind of like, oh, I forgive you. And which means I was judging you. I was blaming you. I was making you wrong. And now I forgive you. I prefer, you know what? I'm making peace with this. What's done is done. I'm a powerful being now, creating my now. And all that really doesn't matter unless I keep dragging on this story and repeating this story to myself and nurturing that hurt. I want to be free and I'm moving on. That's more the process. I've seen people's entire lives change. Their money blows open. Miraculous things happen when they just make peace with their parents.
Of that. And I don't use that term either,
Good.
forgiveness. I use understanding. The Buddhists talk about understanding as love's other name, and the more I can understand, I can it it happens organically where I can let go. It like cuts that cord that keeps me attached to that emotion and that experience. And,
Yes, that
yeah,
cord is around our neck.
yeah.
And I always go, who's suffering here? The person who hurt you or you? And they're going, oh, I'm suffering. The cord is around my neck. It's not, they may not be suffering at all. Yeah. And when you
Yeah,
said
you're right.
compassion, yeah, we we can call up compassion, even if we don't like it, we don't approve it. We can call up compassion for ourselves, compassion for others. Breathe in compassion for ourselves, breathe out compassion for others.
I love that because it feels like forgiveness is with the mind,
It
and
is.
understanding and
Mhm.
compassion come from the heart.
Mhm.
Yeah. At least, yeah, that's how I see it.
Yes, the mind judges, divides, makes people wrong. Uh, uh, Nature doesn't do that. It doesn't divide, make other beings wrong. It is what is. Yeah,
It's it's kind of like I need to forgive that asshole. That's with the mind,
exactly.
but then with the heart, it's like, oh, what happened to them? Well, they were hurt. That affected them that way. They suffer from wrong perception. It's a totally different way of looking at it and understanding versus trying. Yeah, I don't know. It's
It
just
is. It is. It's come dropping down from the head into the heart. This thing's a wrong-seeking missile. Now, my experience is it's not hopeless. It can be evolved and trained to
yeah.
serve our large self, to serve the heart. My uh, feeling of success is when a student says, my God, my mind is actually helping me now. It's not torturing me anymore. I'm not even making the distinction anymore between mind, small self, and heart, large self. They've blended together. It actually can be done.
And I
Yeah.
think that's when we do some inner work, or it gets realigned, reconnected with the mind and the heart get reconnected. One thing I love, I heard you say something on your Instagram, and you talk about how trauma splinters into another timeline. Can you touch on that a little bit? Because going back to the Four Noble Truths, you talked about suffering. How the Buddhists mention that we do a lot as part of the human experience is experiencing a lot of trauma. I don't know if any human being walks out of here without experiencing some form of trauma.
Hmm.
What's your take on all that?
Yeah, I acknowledged people that and honor that even something so small as their dad rejecting a little artwork they did can traumatize one person where it takes another person, maybe that their father, severely beat them. Trauma's trauma. It's depending on the sensitivity of the individual, but where that splintering off happens is where they are at that time. It's too painful to bear. They don't have the resources to deal with it. And so they go, I used to call it putting it in the dungeon. They stuff it. I can't deal with that. I'll stuff it in the dungeon. That part of me that hurts this bad, I can't deal with it. It can even happen, like sometimes it'll be a year ago. Someone got their heart broken. That terrible pain and the part that goes with it gets stuffed in the dungeon. Or let's say someone's pride gets hurt so bad and just where they are, I can't deal with that weakness. Stuff it in the dungeon, and then it gets stuck in literally another dimensional timeline where it keeps repeating that pain, repeating it, repeating it, repeating it. And then as especially now as we're getting more multidimensional, it's actually now easier to reach across dimensions and rescue them, pull them back into your heart. Nobody can rescue them except us. They need our love, our acceptance, our healing, and we bring them home and we help them catch up. Like the mind catches up to the heart. We help them catch up to the maturity level of this large self that we are now. And when we also, another thing is a cue, I teach people this trigger. When we're reactive to something, like emotionally reactive to something, I want you to go, ding. That's not my large self that's reacting like that. It's not my evolved adult self that's reacting. It's that little me, or that, like you said, that other you in that lifetime that got burned by a grace wielder.
Yeah.
Somebody, yeah.
I,
And you go, oh, it needs me to bring it back home to the here and now. It's all happening here and now. It's all happening here and now. But boy, they reach across the dimensions and grab us and say, help me. And when we're being reactive or triggered or badly hurt by something that doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense, ding, they need us. Yeah.
and I love how you talked about we like being the victim. We get caught up in, victim consciousness or whatever. Like I call it victimese. My first language wasn't English or Spanish. It got to a point where I was just speaking victimese and I was always blaming someone else. I had that inability to look at me and try to have some understanding. But
Yeah, because without the resources, it's terrifying to look at me and go, oh my God, I'm responsible. Oh no, anything but that projected out there. No, it was my parents. It was my ex. It was that boss. It's the government. Unless someone has that self-love and self-regard and that spiritual maturity, it's terrifying to look at ourselves.
how would you define the ego? A lot of times in spiritual communities, you hear about the egos, like even with Eckhart Tolle or A Course in Miracles, like the ego's a bad thing. Do you believe it's a bad thing, or is it a part of the human experience, like a tool? Can we have a healthy ego?
Yes. And the reason 20 years ago, decided not to use the word in my book than in my work, and you never hear me use the word unless I first say, I prefer the word small self because I like to use words that kind of knock people out of their boxes because people hear ego and like you just said, it's bad. I have the box that I've got it in. I've got to get rid of it. There's spiritual paths that are trying to get rid of it. And I'm going, you can't cut off your own head. So I just decided, as you can tell, I don't use higher and lower self either. Because that's hierarchical. I use larger self and it surrounds and enfolds your smaller self holographically in 3D, 4D, multidimensional. Higher self is this exalted and lower self is, it's bad too. So I just decided I was teaching corporate training at the time and trying to find ways to say things that also didn't sound woo. Yeah. And when I would talk about larger self and smaller self to these corporate audiences, they're, oh yeah, I get it. I get it. Engineers didn't argue with me. I'm this little blonde girl talking to these engineers. They didn't argue. They got it. They didn't argue. So, ego. I just decided, I like to do pattern interrupts. Use words that make people really feel into it. And they would feel into large and small self. Where ego, they'd make it mean something. And, there's so many. It had so much baggage. So, yeah, I never use the word ego unless I preface all that. It's been made bad, been made like you got to kill it, get rid of it, suppress it. Oh my God, but what you resist persists. Have you seen ego get subdued or, no? And ego is not a bad thing. It is a tool, like you said, that we need to to pretend we're a separate human being for this time span, to have this separate experience before we go back and become one again and then do something else again. It's a tool. Without one, we'd walk out in front of a truck and not care. we wouldn't have any self-preservation. And there's even this sub part that I help people integrate and give a new job called the survival self. our ego functions as a survival instinct. But then what's happened to humanity? It's gone wild and defensive and warlike, and everybody's an enemy, and I can't relax, and I can't let down my guard. So that part of the ego, the survival self, I give it a new job that is more fitting with our where we're going in our evolution, and it becomes more creative and not protective and defensive anymore, but helps us discern and make our way through life in a safe and productive way. Because what's going on right now, survival selves are just battling each other.
Yeah. And we're constantly being fed fear, survival mode mentalities, and all that stuff. It's sad I mean, I don't even watch the news.
I don't either.
It just, you see everyone caught up on survival mode, stress, and we become addicted to stress. I know you love talking about that.
Stress is an addiction. I first discovered this, like a lot of my stuff, through personal experience. I'd get a massage and then want a Starbucks coffee, and I'd go, what is that about? I just paid $80 for a massage, and now I want to ruin it. And and you just tapped in, and my body was going, I want my adrenaline back. My cocktail. I want my cocktail. Why? I don't know, just because I'm used to it. Yeah. We get used to the chemical cocktail that we've been accustomed to. And when well, you're very versed in addiction. Why would somebody want alcohol? Just because it's the chemical cocktail that they've been having.
You know, I know you talk about um being on the wrong path. Like, how do you know how does someone know when they're on the wrong path? I know for me, it was a really great topic I heard you touch on, because being in the 12-step community, I was in AA for a long time, but I realized it was like always on survival mode. Like, all we
Mhm.
have is today. What I did yesterday won't keep me sober. It's always like, all we have is a daily reprieve, and reprieve means delay from impending punishment. I'm like, whoa. And there's a lot of the limiting beliefs. So I had to let go of, like, okay, it served its purpose, but it's time to move on. But that took a lot of, it's kind of scary for an individual once they get conditioned and programmed a certain way to let go of that path, because it's no longer serving. It's could be scary, especially if you're taught if you leave, you drink again, and drink is the die. That's was heavily programmed in me. But I had to learn how to trust myself, which is not always easy for people.
And you did it, which is so beautiful. And you're helping people discover that, like with the 12 steps, that you are empowered, that you are no longer powerless over an addiction, that you're a powerful divine being. Yes, in many, many ways now, we're moving away from the fear messages on the news with religion. Religion is like, do this so you don't go to hell. It's not do this so that you're a powerful being and you learn to be a cosmic creator at some point in your evolution. No, it's do this or God's going to smite you. We're moving away from, and in AA, follow these 12 steps or you're going to drink and die. There are just so many. I've been a health nut all my life, but I was very mindful of that. We don't want to go to eat these foods or you're going to get sick and die. It was like, wait a minute. I see some very unhealthy people because they're doing it out of fear, not moving toward health and vitality, but moving away from those bad foods that are going to kill you. So we're moving into a whole new paradigm of We're doing it because it's healthy and it feels good and it works and it's productive and it's the new way that humanity is going to operate, not to avoid disaster or apocalypse or disease or fear or addiction. We are, and this is new. This is, it's literally a new paradigm, and we're just getting used to it. And yeah, we're turning off the news.
I love that. In step 10, it talks about being more of the observer, teaching you to be more aware of your daily actions within your life, And I never did that before. That's why I love the word ignorance, because it's an extension of the word ignore. And I ignored those behaviors for a very long time. So I became a very ignorant person in many ways, unconscious. But when I started to really take responsibility, become more aware, and take responsibility for my daily life, it changed me completely. So I started to become aware of the limiting beliefs, and then even in AA, I started becoming aware, like, oh, those are very unhealthy. In your terms, we would call it the small self and the larger self. The larger self started to look at the small self, and and, uh, um, and it changed my life completely. And where I'm going at is, you talk about how your beliefs become your reality, and I was stuck in this limiting reality in this bubble in the 12-step community because they believed if you stop doing this thing, you're going to drink, and to drink is to die, and you got to do all you have is today, and you got to keep doing this over and over for the rest of your life. And I go, whoa, this is just a belief. If I let go of this belief, I'm free.
We do grow out of beliefs. That belief was liberating to you at one point. And then your large self, your large self is already expanded, already there. Most of it exists in the non-physical, and it's calling us, it's guiding us. And it feels to me like the more we evolve, the more that large self can seat into us. It's like the more the human part of us expands, the more of that large self can inhabit us. Yeah, maybe when we're not very evolved at all. I'm making these numbers up, but 1% of our large self can express through us. And as we expand, oh, now I'm expressing more of my large self. Then we expand more. Now I'm expressing way more of my large self. Yeah. And so as that happens to you, those smaller beliefs are going to feel like tight shoes.
Mhm.
They're going to feel like, oh, those shoes, I outgrew those. They were great. And now they're pinching my toes. Yeah.
In the Old English term, the word belief has something to do with love and trust.
Oh,
And I always thought that was fascinating. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
How do
I
we
mean,
trust ourselves, learn how to trust ourselves? You work with a lot of people. How do you teach them to
mhm.
trust themselves again?
Well, by shifting that trust to our large selves. We can't always trust our small self. It says, drink that, eat that, go, you know, be sloppy in your thinking, complain about this. But it's more of that process of letting your large self guide you and witnessing what happens when you do and when you don't. And our large selves can be trusted. Now, there is this trial and error aspect of human life that sometimes we misinterpret what our large self meant. Practical example, I feel inspired to do this project, and I think it's going to turn out like that. but it doesn't. And I'm sitting there going, well, what happened? I was following my large self. And then something comes along, and it turns out that that was the first step in something bigger, and it's not going to look like the outcome I thought. So it wasn't that large self let me down. It's just there was more. This just happened. The reason I'm saying this. Yeah, I created this, spent 2 12-hour days creating these web pages, and then like, oh, my team go, oh, that's not going to work. And then I found out that this company is going to help me use that main concept, but put it on steroids. Long story short. So first I thought, wow, I just wasted 24 hours and knocked myself out for nothing. And then I went, oh, it wasn't for nothing. And I was doing what, from Joseph Campbell to all the law of attraction people say is follow your bliss, and just following inspiration. And then I had this epiphany the other day. I've got to do an Instagram video on this. This whole following your bliss thing is new. 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we couldn't follow our bliss. We had to get food. we had to get a job and plow a field, and we follow your bliss. And I was suddenly, that is indicative of this new paradigm. Now we actually, it's more and more, we actually can.
Thank you. I asked you that question because I love how you talk about how we've been socially engineered to look outside of ourselves. And I love that because you talk about how we're always looking out for angels or ETs or politicians and even Jesus. In the New Testament, it talks about Jesus, but in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is saying to look within yourself. What you find within you, what you find will save you. What you do not find will destroy you. So, and I was like, whoa, it's powerful.
Yeah, and they kind of socially engineered that whole story to say only Jesus can save you. And worse than that, you're going to hell if you don't let him, where Jesus never said any of that and did say, look within. But then again, that got twisted by that fear and control narrative, dogma narrative. Yep. Yeah, it is in here. And going back to the silence and how I take people into silence in my events and my retreats. I can talk all day long, and I do have an ability to take people into silence with words, which is kind of paradoxical. But it's still that silence that is the direct experience.
You know what the mystic Rumi said? He said, silence is the language of God. All else is a poor translation.
I agree. And after the initiation in my retreats is so profound that people sit there for hours. And if we ask them to, like, well, what happened? Their words, it's ineffable, can't be put into words.
It's kind of like Thich Nhat Hanh would say. He would say, it's like drinking orange juice. Like, how am I going to describe how orange juice tastes unless you taste it yourself? Like, I could put it into words, but you're not going to really understand until you drink the orange juice yourself.
Right.
Taste it for yourself.
Because I have drank orange juice, I was able to call it up, and it was cool. That sweet tart feel in the mouth and all that. But an experience that someone has not had.
So you're also a channeler too, right?
You know what? I don't plaster that on a sign or anything, but I did realize many years ago that even when I listen back to my own teaching audios, I go, oh, that was good. I don't even remember saying that, but oh, that was good. And the voice doesn't change but what happens, I may have mentioned to you that I'll lead a 5-day retreat with not an iota of planning. Of course, I've done 77 of them, but there's no planning because there's this, like you talk about trusting yourself. I have learned I can trust myself to walk in there and let go, open the mouth, and it's just going to come out 12 hours a day for 5 days. Of course, I don't talk the whole time, but there is that trust from experience that presence will download the thought packets, respond to what they told me they wanted, read their energy as they're telling me, know what to do and say. The energy will emanate, radiate, and you could call that channeled because I didn't do it. Not the small me, the human me. My large self, I take full credit for. Hey, yes, I'm taking credit. I've let my large self do the work, do the heavy lifting. I take credit for that. You know, somebody said, isn't it arrogant to say you healed that person? And I say, I make myself available. I learned to focus. I learned to contain that energy. And then to be just, if they've got a sense of humor, I'll say, and they'll say, God did it. And I'll say, yeah, but not till I showed up.
I love that. Well, even in the 12-step community, you can't take credit for anything. Like, why is it bad to take credit? Like, if I was to stand up on stage, which I'm asked to speak this Friday in Indio, California, that people don't ask me anymore, but I've been asked to speak. So I said, yeah, why not? Because it's a lot of new people. It's about 200 people. So, but if I was to stand on stage and say I got myself sober, everyone would start laughing at you. They think you're crazy. Like you're not.
Yeah.
This goes back to Christianity kind of anonymously in AA where the flesh is bad. You don't have that, capability to get yourself sober. You need to go through something else to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. They want us to be humble and they want us to have perspective, but the question is it keeping us small? What is wrong with being a magnificent divine being? Now, I don't go around everybody, saying, oh, only I can do this. And actually, I get people doing it right there in the retreats. I get them healing people. So there is balance. There is perspective. There is not like, hey, I'm special. No, you can do this too. You want to do it? you know? But yeah, it's that fear. And I do understand that. We've done some horrendous things in other lives, and I've gone through that thing where I'm like, oh my God, I can't get too powerful because in that life, I've got one really weird one. In that life, I was just like this monstrous being and totally used it negatively. Sure. It happens. I had a client the other day that, I had helped her energetically all I could. And then I said, at this point, you are going to have to forgive yourself for the terrible things you've done in the other lives. And then when her kids were little, it's not presence denying your power and blaming you and punishing you for this. You're doing it. And she finally got it. I mean, it was affecting all kinds of things. She thought it was a bunch of different issues. Like she couldn't enjoy sex for her busy mind and all this stuff. And I was going, it's just self-punishment.
Mm.
But again, we're socially conditioned for punishment for keeping ourselves down. Our whole system of dealing with people who do bad things is to punish them. Presence doesn't do that, no matter how horrible. The day I went deep inside and connected with presence about that horrible lifetime, I ended up tears and stuff running out of my eyes and nose, just in a total meltdown of how loving and compassionate presence was about it. Unbelievable.
You know, I always say that's how I got sober, is learning how to retrain the mind and body to live in the present moment where life really lives. It's
Yeah.
about presence, and I'm stuck in the past. I'm stuck in all those emotions and stuff are all branded from the past experiences that needed where I needed to drink, I needed relief, I needed escape. So it's not so much a disease for me, but it was a disease, it was a disconnection, and I needed to drink because I needed some form of relief. It's a normal response to human suffering.
It is to
It's
need relief.
yeah,
Yeah, I have compassion for that, and I'll often
yeah.
start with that with people. Eating, drinking, smoking, whatever. Yeah, you need relief.
Kinda like what Bruce Lee once said, "The poorer we are inwardly, the more we try to enrich our life outwardly."
Yeah. And our whole society trains us to look outside for the answer. Whatever you do, don't look in there.
No, no, no.
Oh, it's scary in there. People do. They go, "Oh my God, can I handle it?" No, yeah, handle it. Yeah.
You talked about soul contracts earlier. Um, what do you think happens to us when we die?
That's not my specialty, and I try to stay in my lane. I love looking at stories of near-death experiences, and I have I mean, 0 fear of death. I have had a not quite all the way near-death experience where I passed out in my hot tub once 20 years ago, and I remember thinking right before I passed out, "Oh, I think I'm dying, and that's okay." And and then my boyfriend ran out there. I have not again, I try to stay in my lane and talk about what I know and not
Yeah.
bullshit about what I don't know. Um, but I have had vivid experiences of some other lifetimes, have no fear of death, and I believe that, it's all gonna be okay. Being just authentic about what I know and feel about it.
And I'm the same way, and I love that because,
Yeah.
like, I know deep down inside there's no such thing as death. Um, we don't really die. We move on, and yeah, it's an interesting topic as any individual, any having this human experience to try to question and try to just
Yeah, I
think
love it.
about.
Have you had near-death experiencers on your show? I love
Yeah,
watching them.
I've had a lot of them. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then sometimes I ask, what part of it's still part of the conditioning, and what part of it really real? I mean, I'm not trained. I'm just you got to be a healthy skeptic as well. You know, but it's very
Right.
interesting
Yeah,
because
a lot of things I do have a knowing of, and I'll say that if I have a knowing, like way back when I wrote my book first book 20 years ago, I said, "Source has no form, and it's gonna appear to you like you need to see it."
mm,
If you need to. If you
yeah.
need an angel, if you need, um, if you need a guide to have a form. I said, "I've been perfectly comfortable with it being formless, so I don't see angels and guides, But if you need an angel or a guide, Source will accommodate.
I love that. My friend Sarah K. Grace, she's known as a psychic paramedic. She grew up in Montana, but ended up becoming a paramedic in Compton, California. During the time when I was running the streets, but over there, it's funny because she could see like the light coming for the soul, and the soul take coming out of the body. And she says sometimes it'll speak to a person, an individual soul, with their belief systems. It might come as Jesus, might come as a family member, might come whatever their belief systems. It'll help you transition so you don't freak out. I guess I don't know, but it's just interesting.
Sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
It does. One of my favorite stories of that perception is by a very credible person. His name is Ray Hernandez, and he was a straight guy. I think he was in law. And his first experience that woke him up to the non-physical was his wife's little dachshund dog was very old and was dying and was paralyzed. And his wife hollered at him from downstairs, called him down there. The dog had been revived, healed, and was running around like a puppy. And there was this light in the corner of the room. And he saw it as a light and later decided it was an ET. She saw it as an angel. They saw the same thing. She was very Catholic. To her, forevermore, it was an angel. He got into ET studies, and to him, it was an ET. So I'm kind of like, my husband and I have seen orbs. I don't particularly define them as yet. I just go, okay, yeah, something non-physical. I just saw it there, and there. Okay.
So in reality, it's all light is just trying to speak to us
Yes.
in our own,
Yeah.
perception, through our own perception or something, or beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more quick question. It's pretty basic, but important. What would you call the purpose of life? Like, what's the purpose of life as a collective and as an individual for yourself?
Yeah. As I've asked my large self about this and just felt through it, I'm a feeler and a knower. I feel like the essence of life is this explosive, creative, abundant force, and it wants to express and experience. And it wants new expression, and it wants new experience, and it wants expansion, evidence. The universe keeps expanding. It doesn't stop and go, okay, I'm done now. And that's why I tell people, if we don't keep expanding, something feels wrong. The expansion is following that flow. Again, we're back to following the flow. When I stop expanding, I feel stagnant. When I start expanding again, I feel, I'm in the flow. I feel like life wants expression and experience, and we are little sparks of that, and we feel more alive when we're expressing and experiencing. Nature just explodes with expression and experience. And purpose, I feel like, is something that we sort of layer onto it if we need to. Purpose is more of a story. Expression and expansion is more of an purpose is more, and again, I'm not diminishing it. I think it gives people juice. But I kind of just experience it. I do what I do because it feels good. It feels alive. If someone says, do you have a purpose? it feels a little mental. I'm just feeling it. It feels like, oh, that's a thought. That's a story. I guess I do. I can't stop doing what I do. But is it a purpose? I'm not sure I need that. So the purpose of life is living, expressing, expanding.
I
And
love that.
and and, people talk about, "Oh, I wanna go to ultimate peace," and I go, "Heaven gets boring.
I love that.
You've been there, and you came here." And I just to again, pattern interrupt, kinda shock people, like, "Been there, done that. Heaven gets boring. You'll want an adventure. You'll go, 'Put me in, coach.' You'll leave that perfection, you'll leave that total peace, and you'll wanna do something new and different." Yeah.
No, I love that. Maybe we are God experiencing God. Maybe it's just meant to experience. I don't know, because it does get boring.
We
And
do it.
and
There's
everything.
there's evidence. We do it. We
Yeah.
just keep having experiences.
And
Yeah.
I feel like everything that we're experiencing is recorded.
Yeah.
You hear about the Akashic records, the book of life, the Holo records. You hear different terms, but maybe everything we're doing is it's for the expansion of consciousness as a
Yeah.
whole.
It anything that ever existed still exists. It's like those parts of ourselves that get stuck in those other timelines. Really, it's all happening now, but they still exist. They Nothing's ever completely destroyed. We remove focus from it or we integrate it together. It's all added. We add to the all that is.
How can we find you?
Well, I have a website some people call the mothership. This is so huge. 20 years of value and content, and it's divineopenings.com. And of course, you've seen some of the little short inspirations on social media, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, but the website is where it happens, where the community is, where the events are announced and the online classes are, the retreats are posted, all of that.
And you have retreats in Sedona and Germany, right?
Yes, and I think the next retreats may be California instead of Sedona. Yes, for various reasons, again, go with the flow. They used to be in Texas. I've done them all over. But the next ones may be, we'll see, in California. Germany is May and October, all the time for years. Yeah. And so we'll see. We're moving. The reason is we're looking for a new place to live. We're moving. So it might be California or it might be Sedona next.
Have you looked at Big Bear?
We stayed up there for 2 weeks once. I'll follow up on that.
Or Compton, California, you just have to wear bulletproof vests.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a good test in how much you radiate so that you feel balanced in that environment. Yeah, I feel like when I spent a week at my mom's senior center recently, I felt like I had to just charge up and radiate. Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on. I'd love to have you back
I'd
anytime.
love to,
Yeah.
Boo. I
Yeah,
really enjoyed it.
yeah, thank you. Carl Jung once said, "Those who look outside dream, those who look inside awake." Thank you for everything you do and helping people go back within themselves.
And thank you for creating this platform for people to share it and for you to share yourself.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yours.
Namastizzle.
Oh, I love that. Namastizzle. All right.
I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
But
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a play. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on a day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding.